Hey all, this is Reddit Tosker. On this channel we're releasing short, spoiler-free videos every day until the release of Elden Ring's DLC. Today's topic is what comes next for FromSoftware after Shadow of the Erdtree releases. One of the best things about Shadow of the Erdtree releasing, apart from it coming out and us being able to play it, is the fact that we won't be waiting for it anymore. FromSoftware will be free to start talking about and marketing any other projects that they happen to be working on. Right now, Shadow of the Erdtree effectively blocks that. I'm sure I and many other fans would be happy and excited to hear about, FromSoftware's new game, but while we're eagerly anticipating the DLC, the impact of that announcement would be dampened because I'm so keenly focused on Shadow of the Erdtree. The Shadow of the Erdtree literally overshadows anything else that FromSoftware might start talking about. So not only am I excited for June 21st, I'm excited about the possibility of being excited about something new. So today let's talk about what FromSoftware's possible future looks like. There is an interesting interview with Miyazaki that gives some insight into the possible direction FromSoftware thinks to go. In the interview, Miyazaki says, "As I have answered in several interviews, the reason we were able to create a title of the scale of Elden Ring was largely due to the fact that we have developed human resources within the company, but from now on I think we will be entrusting them with more projects. In fact, there are several titles that are directed by people other than me, and it is time to increase the number of development personnel. I think we will be able to show you a different color or direction of FromSoftware." End quote. So in this interview he confirms that there are several titles being worked on that are directed by people other than him, that they're going to be very different, that they'll be able to show you a new color or direction of FromSoftware. Ever since Miyazaki directed Demon's Souls, he has been the director in almost every game that FromSoftware has made. The only ones he wasn't director in are Dark Souls 2 and Armored Core 6. But even in those he was involved. For Armored Core he was the director initially, and we don't know for exactly how long. It could have been a very long time. There's a 2016 interview in which Miyazaki accidentally let slip that Armored Core 6 was in development. There's no knowing when he stopped being director and handed the reins over to someone else. And as for Dark Souls 2, he existed in a supervisory role. Ever since Miyazaki's ascent, no FromSoftware game has been free of his influence. But these new games that he's talking about that other people are directing will be. Later on in the interview, he is asked, "How much do you look at the titles directed by other people?" Miyazaki responds, "It's different if you consult with me, but as the president I only check at the minimum amount of information and try not to look at them too much. Since I'm essentially a director, when I touch a title that is in development I end up thinking about it and wanting to say something, but in that case I'm not the director, I'm not the main vision, and I can't take responsibility until the end, so I feel that any unnecessary interference would be negative for the game and the project." This is collaborated and further explained in an IGN interview he did later. In that interview he says, "Yes, I think it's very likely that we'll see new directors going forward, and I think if we do that, I'd like to step away from the supervisory role and give them full direction and full control over those projects. I think this really is the best way and the easiest way for them to flourish within that environment and with those new projects." He also says right after that Dark Souls 2 is one of the little area of regrets for him. Personally, he enjoys a lot of projects where he's director, so I think a supervisor role for me is just something I'm not used to and that is maybe not quite a good fit. So he admits he doesn't like being a supervisor. He regrets how he supervised in Dark Souls 2. And that going forward he's going to step away from the supervisory role. He's going to give full creative direction and control for the vision of these new projects, to whoever happens to be leading them. He intends to not be involved at all. And there are actually lots and lots of interviews where he talks about stuff like this, where he thinks that only one vision should be prioritized. There needs to be one guy in charge. In another interview when they were talking about possibly working with Fumito Ueda, he said, "When it comes to creating games together, I don't think it'll ever happen. Because to develop a game, it's better to have just one director. So the game is first developed with the director's creative vision. I have my vision, and Ueda-san has his vision. Probably if we happen to work together, I wouldn't be in the director position." End quote. So my point is, we are going to soon find out what a Miyazaki-less game looks like post-Demon's Souls. He wants to let other people direct, and he doesn't want to influence their directing by being in a supervisor position. And there's at least 2 games being worked on that fit that criteria. Now, as for Miyazaki himself, in that interview, he says, "As a director, I am already working on the next title, so I will not spoil it for you. In the medium to long term, I would like to work on a fantasy that is more abstract than past titles. In the process of creating action RPG fantasy titles, including Elden Ring, I have accumulated a lot of fantasy ideas and images that don't fit into that format, and I would like to bring them all together and release them somewhere. So he confirms that he's working on something that he doesn't want to spoil because it's already in development, and he expresses a desire to work on something that's more abstract than Elden Ring. There are distant plans in the work to work on that at some point. I need to point out here that when this interview was happening, Elden Ring's DLC was not yet announced, so the game that is currently in development might just be Shadow of the Erdtree. He then goes on to say this: "However, I think that if I were to go out on a limb and pursue my own interests, it would be difficult for us to make a profit. Therefore, I would like to have the new, young directors take charge of the titles that support the company, while I quietly work on titles that are more of a hobby. This time we are increasing the number of staff and creating new structure with this goal in mind." Finally, he finishes the interview by reiterating what he's already said, saying, "First of all, we will continue to update Elden Ring in the future. Also, as I have mentioned, in addition to the titles that I myself am directing, we are also developing several titles by directors other than myself. But I am not at a stage where I can talk about them yet in detail. I am sorry, but I would appreciate if you could give me a little more time." Now, that part about having the young directors take up the bulk of the money making for the company so he can work on his passion projects is a joke, but it looks to me like the kind of joke that he means, like he's seriously hoping it works out that way. But anyway, now we have an idea of what FromSoftware's plans are going forward. Miyazaki will keep directing, but so will other people, and he will be uninvolved in their works. Now, as for the type of games that they are going to be making, we really have no idea. There's a lot of things I would like them to do. I would like them to go back to the Sekiro-style gameplay and innovate on it, which was something that was proved to be possible by Lies of P. I would love a new Armored Core game. They did a fantastic job in proving that they can take their old IPs and bring them to a modern setting and make them popular and successful and good. Which is also something I would like them to do with some of their older IPs like Kingsfield. It would be really interesting to see how they would try and adapt Kingsfield. Kingsfield is slower, it's first person, and its dungeons are labyrinthian, so it'd be great to see how they would change the combat or the exploration. How would they go about giving it the Armored Core treatment? So those are the things I'd like to see. I'm not mentioning the new things that they might be working on because there's no way to know what they're working on, that's new. But whatever new things that they're working on, whatever new IPs they're doing or genre that they're doing, I would of course play it. They could do a first-person shooter or a battle royale or a puzzle game, and I'd still play it. And I'm going to keep that attitude and play whatever they make, at least until they give me a reason not to. Alright, that's the end of this video. As always, thank you very much for watching.